If you have ever Googled how to create an Azure virtual machine, you have probably seen tutorials that show you Windows or Linux, not both. And most of them skip the parts that actually trip people up, like inbound port rules, SSH key files, and what to do when your VM won't connect. In this video, I am going to show you how to create both a Windows virtual machine and a Linux virtual machine in Azure, from scratch, step by step, in the Azure portal. You will see exactly how to connect to Windows using RDP and Linux using SSH. We will also cover data disks, boot diagnostics, and custom script extension, which means this video covers a big chunk of the AZ-104 compute section in one shot. Whether you are setting up a cloud lab, studying for AZ-104, or just want to know how this actually works in production, this video is for you. I am Jai from Jai Cloud Sec. Quick context before we build. An Azure virtual machine is a computer running in the cloud. You choose the operating system. You choose the size and the region. You get full control over the machine, just like a physical server, except it spins up in minutes, and you pay only for what you use. Now, let us create one. In the Azure portal, go to the Virtual Machines. Click Create Virtual Machine. Subscription. Select your subscription. Resource group. Select RG Demo Lab, which was created before. Virtual machine name. Type Demo VM01. Region. North Central US, or the closest region to you. Availability. No infrastructure redundancy required for this lab. We cover availability zones and scale sets in the next video. Image. Click See All Images and select Windows Server 2025 Data Center. Size. Standard B2S. Low cost. Enough for a lab. Administrator account. Username. Type AzureAdmin. Password. Set a strong one. Save it. You will need it for RDP. Inbound port rules. This is the one people miss. Select Allow selected ports. Choose RDP 3389. This opens the firewall to allow your remote desktop connection. Check the license box. For OS disk, leave it default and click Next. Networking. Choose Virtual Network VNet Demo Lab. For subnet, choose Subnet-01. For public IP, let it be default as auto-assigned. Click Review and Create. Once Azure validates, click Create. Deployment takes 2 to 3 minutes. While that deploys, notice what Azure just created for you automatically. A network security group, a public IP address, and a network interface card. You did not have to set those up manually. Azure handles it all in one click. We will stop the video and return once virtual machine deployment is complete. Deployment complete. Next, we will connect to the virtual machine using RDP. Open Remote Desktop Connection on your local device. From VM Overview page, copy the public IP address and paste it on RDP window. Click Connect. Enter username and password when prompted, and accept the security warning. Exam tip. RDP equals port 3389. Your NSG must have an inbound rule allowing 3389 for this to work. This is directly tested on AZ-104. And there it is, a full Windows Server 2022 desktop running in Azure. You are connected to a machine sitting in a Microsoft data center from your laptop. Warning, in production, you should never open port 3389 or port 22 to the internet in your NSG. This exposes your VM to brute force attacks and port scanning from anywhere in the world. Real companies do not do this. So how do companies actually connect to their VMs securely? The answer is Azure Bastion. Azure Bastion is a fully managed service that lets you connect to your virtual machines securely, directly through the Azure portal in your browser, with no public IP on the VM and no open RDP or SSH ports in your firewall. Here is the difference. With direct RDP or SSH, your connection travels over the public internet, and your VM must have port 3389 or 22 exposed. That is a known attack surface. With Azure Bastion, the connection travels over HTTPS, port 443, through a secure, managed gateway inside your virtual network. Your VM does not need a public IP. Your NSG does not need port 3389 or 22 open. The attack surface is gone. Think of it like this. Instead of leaving a window open for people to climb through, Bastion installs a secure front door with a lock that only Azure controls. It works for both Windows and Linux VMs. Same service, same portal experience. No client software needed. Exam tip. Azure Bastion provides browser-based RDP and SSH over TLS port 443 without requiring a public IP on the VM or open RDP SSH ports in the NSG. This is a core AZ-104 security topic. To use Azure Bastion, you deploy it into your virtual network. Here is how. In the Azure portal, go to the virtual network, then select the virtual name, VNet Demo-Lab, which was created previously. Go to Settings, then Subnet, and click Add Subnet on top. A new window will open. Change the subnet purpose to Azure Bastion. It will update the name from default to AzureBastionSubnet. For IP address range, leave it default, but make sure the size is /26, which is a requirement. Leave other settings as default and click Add. Now, this is important. Azure Bastion requires a dedicated subnet in your VNet, named exactly AzureBastionSubnet. The name must be exact, not Bastion Subnet, not Bastion. It must be AzureBastionSubnet, and it must be at least the /26, which gives you 64 IP addresses. Bastion deployment takes a few minutes. It is a managed service, so Azure handles everything else. Exam tip. Azure Bastion Subnet must be named exactly Azure Bastion Subnet. Any other name fails. Minimum size is /26. Bastion itself requires a standard public IP. Your VNs connected through Bastion do not need a public IP. Now let me show you how smooth this is. Go to Virtual Machine and click on the VM which was created before. Click Connect at the top, and this time select Bastion. Enter the username, AzureAdmin, and the password you set when you created the VM. Click Connect. A new browser tab opens, and there is your Windows Server desktop, running inside Azure. Connected securely through Bastion over HTTPS directly in the browser. No RDP client, no downloaded file, no port 3389 open to the internet. This is exactly how enterprise teams access their VMs in production. And notice, we did not need to change anything on the VM itself. Bastion sits at the VNet level. Any VM in that VNet can be accessed through it. That is Windows done. Lab connection with RDP and production connection with Bastion. Now let us build the Linux VM and do the same. Now this is where it gets interesting for developers and DevOps engineers. Now let us create a Linux VM. Same process, but a few key differences. In the Azure portal, go to Virtual Machines and click Create. Then Azure Virtual Machine. Subscription, select your subscription. Resource group, select RG Demo Lab, which was created before. Virtual machine name, Demo VM02. Image, This time select Ubuntu Server 22.04 LTS. LTS means long-term support, stable, and widely used in production. Authentication type, this is different from Windows. Instead of a password, Linux VMs use SSH public key authentication. Azure will generate a key pair for you. For username, use Azure user. For SSH public key source, generate new key pair. For key pair name, type demo VM02. Inbound port rules, select SSH22 instead of RDP. Click Next to disks. OS disk, leave default. Networking, choose Virtual Network VNet 104 Lab. For subnet, choose Subnet 01. For public IP, let it be default as auto-assigned. Everything else, same as before. Click on Review and Create. Once Azure validates, click Create. Deployment takes 2 to 3 minutes. If you get a pop screen for deployment recommendation, click Ignore. What it means is Azure is recommending to use a different region, as most of the popular regions are running out of space. It's going to ask you to generate and download the SSH key. Click on it. It will create the key and save it. Remember the location, as we need it when we log into the VM. Remember, in production, you should never open port 3389 or port 22 to the internet in your NSG. We will stop the video and return once virtual machine deployment is complete. Deployment complete. Next, we will connect to the virtual machine using RDP. To connect to a Linux VM, we use SSH, Secure Shell. Open your terminal. Navigate to where you save the .pem key file. Exam tip, SSH equals port 22. Azure supports both password and SSH key authentication for Linux VMs. SSH keys are more secure. The NSG must allow port 22 for direct SSH to work. Type ssh-i your-keyfile.pem as your user at followed by the public IP address of your VM. Press Enter. You are now inside a Linux machine running in a Microsoft data center. Type Who am I? It returns Azure Admin. Type uname-a. It shows you are running Ubuntu. That is SSH. Clean, fast, secure. In production, you should always use keys, not passwords. Now, the production way. Go to your Linux VM overview. Click Connect, then Bastion. This time, for authentication type, select SSH private key from local file. Upload your .pem file. Enter the username AzureAdmin. Click Connect. A terminal opens in your browser. No SSH client. No open port 22. No exposed IP. You are inside the Linux VM, securely through the Azure portal. Same Bastion service. Same VNet. Works for Windows and Linux. This is the correct way to access VMs in any real production environment. Exam tip. Azure Bastion supports both RDP, Windows, and SSH Linux connections from the browser. It eliminates the need for public IPs on VMs and open management ports in NSGs. This is a key AZ-104 topic. By default, your VM comes with an OS disk. That is where Windows or Linux operating system lives. But in production, you never store your application data on the OS disk. You attach a separate data disk. Why? Because if you need to rebuild the VM, you can detach the data disk and reattach it to a new VM. Your data is safe. Go to your VM, click Settings, then Disks in the left menu. Under Data Disk, click on Create and attach a new disk. Give it a name, Demo VM Data Disk. Choose storage type as standard SSD for low cost. Set the size, 32 gigabytes is fine for a demo. Click Apply at bottom. Your VM now has a separate data disk. On Windows, you will need to initialize it in Disk Management. On Linux, you will mount it with a few commands. Two more features, both tested on AZ-104. Boot Diagnostics captures a screenshot of your VM console as it boots. Invaluable when a VM is stuck and you cannot connect remotely. Go to VM, then Help, click Boot Diagnostics. You can also enable Serial Console for low-level troubleshooting without any network access. Custom Script Extension lets you run a script automatically on your VM after deployment. Install IIS on Windows, Nginx on Linux, without logging in manually. Go to Settings, then Extensions and Applications, Add. Search Custom Script Extension, select the result, then click Next. Browse and upload your .ps1 or .sh script. Click Review and Create. Azure runs it for you. For the lab, we skip this section about uploading the file and installing the software. It takes some time, and I want to walk you through the steps on how it's done. Exam tip: custom script extension equals automated post-deployment configuration. Boot Diagnostics needs a storage account or Azure Managed Storage. Both are tested on AZ-104. Let us recap everything we just built. Windows VM, Windows Server 2022, connected via RDP port 3389 for the lab demo. Connected securely via Azure Bastion in production, no open ports, browser-based. Linux VM, Ubuntu 22.04 LTS, connected via SSH port 22 for the lab demo. Connected securely via Azure Bastion in production, terminal in the browser, no .pem file required. Azure Bastion deployed into AzureBastionSubnet, connects to any VM in the VNet over HTTPS, no public IP on VM, no open management ports, the production correct way to access VMs. Data disk, attached separately to keep application data safe from OS issues. Boot Diagnostics and custom script extension, monitoring and automation, both tested on AZ-104. Exam cheat sheet: RDP equals port 3389, SSH equals port 22. Both need NSG inbound rules to work with direct connections. In production, never open port 3389 or 22 to 0.0.0.0. Use Azure Bastion instead. AzureBastionSubnet must be named exactly AzureBastionSubnet and must be at least /26. Azure Bastion requires a standard public IP, but your VMs behind Bastion do not need one. Azure Bastion works for both Windows RDP and Linux SSH, from the browser over HTTPS port 443. Linux VMs, SSH keys are more secure than passwords. Always use keys in production. Data disks survive VM deletion. OS disks do not by default. And that is your complete Azure virtual machine setup. Windows, Linux, RDP, SSH, data disk, boot diagnostics, and custom scripts, all in one video. You now know how to connect the lab way and the production way. That distinction alone puts you ahead of most people studying for the exam. If this video helped you, hit the thumbs up. It genuinely helps more people find this content. Subscribe and hit the bell. The next video is Azure Virtual Machine Availability, availability zones, availability sets, and scale sets. If you are building for production or prepping for the exam, that is essential watching. I am Jai from Jai CloudSec. See you in the next one.